Welcome to the show that is too obscure to accept blood money and vague ad reads. Let me put this in hip-hop terms. Sega was basically their Sugar Hill Gang, and Sega Rally was their Rapper's Delight. While not the first rally game, it did bring the concept to a wider audience. It had off-road driving, pace notes, and the kind of handling you'd expect. It gargled quarters in the arcades and sold gangbusters when it was ported to the Sega Saturn, but that soon got surpassed by, shall I say, the Run DMC of rally games. Eden Studios' V-Rally, bringing Sega Rally style racing to a more wider audience as it was released for the PlayStation, as well as PC and Game Boy. The first one was their self-titled debut album, and the second was King of Rock, or Raising Hell. To most, an amazing follow-up with more content and a track editor to boot. And then it petered out after being surpassed by the Colin McRae rally games and everything else, basically Public Enemy, as well as the rise of gangster rap. But then, in 2018, as some sort of nostalgia bait, came V-Rally 4, their Crown Royal. Hell, the back of the box even glows how they were legends, and no one gives a shit. Admittedly, this comparison doesn't make sense because Crown Royal at least has all 3 members of the group involved, while V-Rally 4 isn't even made by Eden. There's one guy who worked on the third game as its game director, but the team is very different, and so is the name, Kiloton. Who? Exactly. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't want to review V-Rally 4 because it's very boring. Just a rehash of the dirty games. Not even a good one if I'm honest. It doesn't even have Subarus, no Toyotas in it. Oh, this is really bad. So instead of wasting my time with something nobody cares about, here's V-Rally 2, released in 1999. Or V-Rally Championship Edition 2, as it is officially called. Yeah, no. This was developed by Eden Studios, of course, released for the PlayStation that year, and then ported to the Dreamcast and Windows PC the next year, now with the subtitle of Expert Edition, which I'll be covering for the majority of this video, meaning the PC port. However, in America, this is very spicy. Back in 1997, when publisher Infogram decided to release V-Rally 1 to the US for a November date, they partnered with Electronic Arts to release it there. However, because of that, it got a name change in order to be part of EA's still really long Need for Speed franchise. This was the year in NFS 2 after all, now already they got a spin-off. Technically. Need for Speed V-Rally was the name, and they continued with that for the sequel, though more as a subtitle this time, going to the front cover, but it's officially called Need for Speed V-Rally 2, so yeah. The upside of all this is that Eden Games were then hired to make the PS1 version of Porsche Unleashed, and they did a rather bang-up job. However, when it comes to the Dreamcast, EA promised to never release their games there over Sega's decision for the console. They championed 3DFX's proposal of putting their Voodoo ships in it, but after the company decided to not shut the fuck up about their partnership, Sega severed ties and pissed EA off, which is why V-Rally 2 is not Need for Speed V-Rally 2, but rather a Test Drive V-Rally. No 2 for some reason, so people there would think it's a port of the first game. Yeah, this was during a time after Infogram acquired Accolade and in turn the franchise, when the Test Drive series had a major identity crisis, more so than Need for Speed really. Take for instance Le Mans 24 Hours. It is called that in Europe, but in the US they had to put the Test Drive name before it. Except for the PS2 version for some reason. Maybe in an alternate timeline, Infogram somehow bought Codemasters and released Test Drive Grid in 2008. But even if the games were first released in America, they have a tendency to change the title of a spin-off game, some removing the Test Drive name, when releasing them in Europe. Case in point, Driven to Destruction, also known as Test Drive Evil Destruction. If it weren't for the original title and also word of mouth, I could have sworn it was a budget title. Even Wikipedia had the same mentality. You know the page is bad when the Italian version has more information than the English page. Anyways, what are we talking about again? I didn't even say sup. Start this baby up and you get the intro right away, with CGI too advanced and perhaps too ugly to be playable for the consoles it's on. Pretty nice though, except the Lancer in this video is not the same as in the game. It's an Evo 4 rather than an Evo 6. Also, who the fuck is Bruno Bonnell? It's this guy. He was one of the founders of Infogram, and the guy responsible for buying a lot of game studios during his tenure, like Accolade, GT Interactive, and the Atari brand, using it for their publishing subsidiaries. It did got fully changed to Atari since 2009, but that's after Bruno left the company 2 years prior, and after buying shares of that zombie company. Meanwhile, after he left, he landed on a bunch of high-profile jobs in the private sector, as well as being the host of the French version of The Apprentice, which didn't last long, what a shame. And then he became a government official, being part of the centrist En Marche party that led to Macron's presidency, now overseeing some plan to make the country have a greener economy by 2030 or whatever. I was trying to find out if he did anything notable or controversial in his career, other than that shopping spree, but this is a video about a funny card game, not me wondering about the politics of a neighboring country. All this to say, it's really weird that the founder gets first billing and not the company is leading. Be glad it's not someone worse. Imagine if EA opened their games this way. Andrew Wilson presents. Fuck off, you cunt! Anyways, no one cares about that capitalist. Let's play the game for once. I'm partial to the PS1 versions with the reggae inspired number. The expert one is very repetitive if I'm honest, but shame I can only put 5 letters in my name.
Oh god, it's Pinkie and Perky.
Pick a car, or try before doing so. That's nice, I guess. For the car list, it's pretty short, but it has the cars you'd expect. Impreza, Lancer, Focus, 206, as well as the Corolla, the Cordoba, the Octavia, and the Hyundai Coupe for some reason. Plus, you have 2 ones like the Zara and the Megane, and the smaller 106, Micra, and Saxo. Can't forget about the unlockable ones, which are common things you'd expect nowadays, but very interesting nonetheless, like the Renault 8, the Abarth 141, that shitting bastard, and the 405 Pikespeed Climber, hell yeah! However, there are differences not just between console versions, but also regional differences. While the list is nearly the same in every version, the Expert Edition adds another car in the roster, but it's just a reskinned Corolla, here known as the Corolla Brundle. As in Martin Brundle? Oh shit! Sponsored by this very game. Not only that, but the way to unlock these cars is very different depending on where you are. For instance, while you can unlock the Renault 8 by winning the European Championship in the European version, the US PS1 version, on your hand at least, unlocks the Celica GT4 if you do so. It's so weird, but I guess they did that because Americans don't know what a Renault is? They had the little car in the Alliance there, I don't know. After that, yeah, 4 game modes. Time trial, which is obvious. Championship mode, where you race in a bunch of rallies or on points and all that. Via Rally Trophy, the multi-car races where whoever has the fastest time in overall series wins. And Arcade, which is just the same, except there's a ticking timer to worry about, crush checkpoints and more, and the races begin with rolling starts. Other than that, it's identical, but with less races per series. Not much else to say before I get the presentation, so... It's expected for a game from 1999 or 2000 to look, well, like this. Even Need for Speed High Stakes look rather blocky, even on PC. But I can let it slide. You can kind of get away with the cars looking like shit when you're limited by polygons and the hardware of the time. I said kind of, not always. I'm looking at you, Test Drive 6 from the same year. This one at least looks better on all versions. There's even a cockpit view in the expert version. Shame whoever made this repack screwed that up. Here's the Dreamcast version if you're wondering what it's supposed to look like. And like in the Forza games, it focuses a bit too much on the steering wheel. Well, how are we supposed to show them that we can make impressive graphics? Don't. Thankfully, there's free chase cams, a bumper, and a hood cam for your troubles. Regardless, I like the graphics overall. It has its charm, especially in the PS1 original. However, what I don't like are the night stages. Holy fuck, I can't see shit. And because of that, I kept struggling in these stages. Rainy day? I can handle that. Now roads, challenging, but not impossible. Night driving? Oh fuck no, there goes my commanding lead. What's more frustrating is that the Dreamcast version has better lighting than the PC port. I can see further than usual. I feel robbed. The HUD is simple, but functional. That is, if you're not playing on higher resolutions than it was designed for. Yeah, like many 3D PC games at the time, it has the issue of the HUD not resizing. so you have tiny elements that can sometimes be hard to read. You're lucky I'm not running it on a 4K monitor. Minis are alright, they work fine, and there is some of that Y2K aesthetic on it, whatever that is. But I kinda wish it had more of that. The PS1 version has a bit more of that, with its loading screen just giving you a heartbeat monitor, sound included. Though every time I hear it, I keep either thinking of Navali or Leona Hydern. The US version, unfortunately, is less stylish. I hope it likes CG screens and silence, though I doubt you'll ever play the PS1 original when the ports have a much faster loading, especially the PC version. As for sound, they all sound the same! No matter what car you use, whether it's the Pretzel or the Sport Quattro or the Stratus, they all sound completely the same, even with slight pitch differences. This is just so inexcusable, I'm sorry. And this is from 1999, the year of Gran Turismo 2! Sure, that game didn't have the best engine noises, but they're different for each car. This one is meandering, I refuse to let that slide. At least the ambience is great. I'm sure you can tolerate the cicadas in some places. The co-driver is really simple, only uses the basic severity style for corners and no distance between pace notes. It works, but it's no Sega Rally 2. At least you can change the gender of them, as well as the language you prefer. Why would you do that though?
Gauche léger, long, se referme. Droite moyen, long, s'ouvre.
Why did I set my co-driver in French? Other than piss you off.
Oh, we could have it in French!
I really don't know. For the soundtrack, there is licensed music, and by that I mean just one licensed song, a remix of Painful by Sin. If that artist sounds familiar, he did Hard EBM, which was used in NFS Underground 2. The rest, half of them named Rhapsody, are made by an in-house composer named Pinkie Pie. I mean Piggy Pie. Sure, the many ones are also different remixes of Painful, but the samples are so short you wouldn't think so. The Sin one is pretty great actually, even if it's shortened by a lot for some reason, whilst the rest are great at best, but mediocre at worst, with the US version having great ones, while the PAL one has one awesome track, and two duds afterwards. Oh yeah, aside from sharing the first three, much like Sonic CD, each region has a different soundtrack. The US version has more of a trance sound, with Duva Groove, Videodrone, and Asen, the drum and bass odd one out. I vibe with Tuba Groove, my favorite so far. The PAL version has more of a hard-hitting sound, with Rhapsody's 4 and 5 and FM. Rhapsody 4 is my all-time favorite. Rhapsody 5 can remind me of the Western soundtrack for GT1 with those saw sounds. Don't like the time to get you bits though. Meanwhile, I can't stand FM due to the fake sounding guitar sounds. Ugh. However, the Dreamcast version has the PAL soundtrack for the PS1 original, no matter the region. So you'd expect the PC version to have that as well, right? Well, no, it only has those first three. What, did it run out of disk space? At least I don't have to hear bad guitar, but I can't survive with just free. Good thing whoever made this repair lets me add more tracks in the music folder. And it does work, the game recognizes and plays them.
Gauche léger, long, se referme. Droite léger, très long, s'ouvre.
And I don't think there's a tight limit on how many you can store in it. I suspect that the count stops at 98 or something, but you never know. So how's the gameplay? I gotta be honest, I fucking hate the handling. While I'm fine with the expected rally handling, this is so hard to get used to than simulation rallying. This one feels way too twitchy, I kept scraping the sides of the road. And that's because the PC port thinks the stick I'm using to steer is a D-pad, so it easily goes full lock no matter how soft you move. Plus, I have moments where the car kept sliding, but isn't turning at all. It's about as annoying as the handling in TXR2. And for some reason, braking with the foot brakes isn't as effective, almost as if they have no ABS. But instead of immediately dropping the revs to high low when you lock them, they jump to the maximum. And the brakes don't actually lock, you can still steer it as you brake, but they don't slow you down quickly. The handbrake is way more effective than the foot brake for this shit. Worse yet, if you do use them a lot, the brakes fade very quickly by the end of the stage. Not something you should worry about, but if you're playing with assists on, the game will overuse them. And fuck, does this game like to flip my car. They're so light, they're so easy to get them upside down more often than not. Sure, some of them are my fault, but the game tends to make my cars do a front flip after a jump, as if they don't have a wing on the back. It's annoying as fuck, but thankfully the game resets you pretty quickly. I'll give them that, but it's still a time loser. Now driving, despite that, feels decent. Some other corners are tough, sure, but manageable. It's at least more trouble than the first game, way more actually. However, I really fucking hate taking the hairpins way too much. No matter how I tackle it, I always fail. Use the handbrake? Nope. Tap the foot brake? Nope. Try wall riding? That's even worse. I'm sure there's a technique to tackle a hairpin smoothly with speed, but in the meantime, I always drive whenever my co-driver calls an incoming one. Now, I kind of did improve my hairpin tackling, though that's because of the Stratus I'm driving. Seriously, this car is so nimble and speedy, I love it. I did spun out a few times, this is a rear-wheel drive car after all, but still, regardless, everything about the driving is so frustrating. Holy shit, I feel like I'm that driver's ed student from an ad for the game.
Where did you learn to drive, Mr. Carter?
It's missing a lot of dents though. Speaking of which, there's damage, both visual and mechanical, which explains the moments where I kept sliding but not turning. I mean, even if the car is all fixed, I still keep going all over the place, but thankfully you can repair your car between stages. The opponents aren't any better. If anything, they're really inconsistent in the PC version. In the Rally Championship mode in World and Expert Champs, it's the perfect example. Most gravel stages are a pleasure for me, as I finish seconds ahead of the pack, but a few times, even when I'm doing decently, I still struggle to either keep my lead or catch up to them. That tends to happen more in the tarmac ones, but like I said, the night stages are the worst. Not only do I slap because of shit visibility, but the opponents are godlike here somehow. Holy shit, I lose by seconds and positions. However, in the super special stages, yes, there are crossover tracks here, they are the ones who struggle. Okay, it's weird because in the Dreamcast version it's less of a hassle to win at least a world championship. Thankfully I did much better in export on PC, thanks for me driving the Stratos. Racing with opponents at the same time is even more inconsistent. Sometimes, even on the easiest series in VR Trophy and Arcade, the opponents were breathing down my neck, yet I still managed to win most. However, there were a few instances where one of the racers decided to break out of their skill issue and just speed away in first place, making it impossible for me to reach it. Where was that in the other ones? Yeah, this game can be really frustrating sometimes, but the worst part is that I keep forgetting that the Expert Edition never autosaves, not even after I finish the championship. So I tend to lose a lot of progress after I'm done with a session. It's so annoying, especially if you're more used to modern games that do autosave. I know that's on me for forgetting to save, but a prompt between runs would have been very appreciated. Even the PS1 original lets you autosave. Alright, enough frustration. The good thing about this is that the runs are short, 2 or 3 stages per, depending on which championship. And your opponents become complete chumps once you drive to 405, so V-Rally 2 has 12 locations, all based on the 1998 WRC season, though missing Kenya. Bullshit, even the first game had it! Despite that, they're quite good, they're challenging, they can get narrow, but under the scenery in a few stages, they're not very memorable. They can look rather samey with the same buildings, same terrain, same natural tunnel, what have you. Even the super specials feel samey, though it's also weird that almost every hairpin has a chicane right before it. I was assuming that all the tracks, with the exception of the super specials, were made with the game's track editor, and you can use it here. Look at this, not only can you place path pieces, but also bend the track as you please, so you can try and make it right because of real life or fictional tracks if you feel like it. Sadly, it has limitations. For one, you can't cross paths no matter the height difference. So no Suzuka Circuit replica, which is really bullshit because there's one Swedish track that has a crossover bit. Hell, even see more tracks that has paths crossing, the PS1 version. And yet you still can't do that in any of the track editors. Another thing is that while you can make the path, you can't widen nor narrow it, and you can't make the scenery. The devs must have been really lucky with their tracks looking the way they are before shipping this version. Either that or they cheat the system. That'll explain why I can't make the airplanes the way they did it. Though I get the feeling the pre-made stages are actually bespoke tracks. That will also explain the junction turns and the surface changes in the PS1 original. Man, I really feel robbed. The fuck? Isn't that just the first stage but mirrored? Holy shit, where they're fully developed or made through the editor, they're still somehow too lazy to make a new one from scratch. Okay, lazy is a pretty strong word. I guess they run out of time to make better tracks. Either way, yeesh. Not much else to say. I don't think even the Dreamcast version has online play, though I like how in the linear tracks in time trial mode, your car gets reset to start after crossing the finish line when it's multiple laps. Silly, but convenient I guess. And upon unlocking the 405 by earning 10,000 performance points, whatever that is, you're also awarded with a full version of Climb Dance, a short film about said car driving out the Pikes Peak. Now, this is from 1999/2000. This is pre-YouTube, so even despite being played at glorious 240p, it's still pretty sweet to see this as a reward. Even then, the film is on YouTube at a higher quality, so it's not as worth it nowadays, even if that version has the piano music replaced. So that was Need for Test Drive V-Rally Expert Championship Edition 2 or whatever. You wanna talk terribly aged racing games? I would play Supersonic Racers than this. I know I'm gonna get a lot of backlash for saying it, but while I did enjoy it at times, I fucking hate this game. I can excuse the blocky and smeary graphics, but I draw the line at the shitty driving. Wait, shouldn't it be the other way around? Whatever. Hell, I don't think it aged poorly if Colin McRae from the previous year had a better drive feel than this. This one's just bad, even for an arcade game really. This is less King of Rock and more, tougher than leather? I don't know. Maybe I should have done a rock music comparison instead. V-Rally is Motley Crue, and Colin McRae Rally is Nirvana. No, that's even worse. If you want to get into V-Rally, don't bump over the first two, or even the fourth entry. Just play the third game. While it doesn't have really old cars like that game, it has a more interesting career mode, and even has the return of Kenya. Seriously, how is VR2 the only one to not have that? Regardless, best game out of all if I'm honest, and I will review it more thoroughly at some point in the future, don't you worry. But man, shrink those damn rims. Next time, Max Verstappen's favorite discipline.
And mine too.
Hello, you cunt.
Nice meeting you too, Matahari.
Ah.
How I've missed your lips.
Yours too.